We left off when the snake attacked us in the pen. It took several souls from the flock with it, including Nabil. I was standing there like an actor in some dark comedy. Layers of dust had settled over my body, and the entire pen was buried in it. The sheep, the camels, the tent, the bed, the fodder, nothing was spared. I shook my head and dust billowed out as if it were coming from a brick kiln. I ran my fingers through my hair, but they got stuck. It was a matted mess of sand and filth. My hair reached my shoulders and my beard was long. One day, I took the shears we used to clip the sheep's wool and hacked away at my hair haphazardly, just to ease the itching caused by the total lack of hygiene. My thighs and groin were covered in sores and rashes to the point where I couldn't bear to look at them. Lice, bedbugs, and countless nameless insects had taken residence on me. As soon as night fell, the itching became a form of torture because of the sweat trapped there after a day of back-breaking labor. The vermin were far more comfortable in my body than I was. Honestly, the sheep were probably cleaner than me. I had named many of the sheep so I could remember them, and each one had a story connected to my life. I'll give you 2 examples. The first, if you remember, was the ram that rammed me in the chest. I named him Ravatar, after a heavy-duty grinder we had back in our village. One day, my father was crossing a narrow wooden bridge that only fits one person. When he reached the middle, that son of a Ravatar came from the other side. He kept walking, completely indifferent, essentially telling my father, "Back up, I'm the one crossing." My father refused. Ravatar told him again, "Go back," 2 or 3 times. Nothing. On the 4th time, he didn't say a word. He just charged and slammed into my father's chest. My father fell into the valley, hitting his elbow on a rock so hard it shattered. Even though they rushed him to the hospital, his arm healed crooked and remained partially paralyzed. I named the ram that hit me Ravatar because I imagined that was exactly how my father felt on that bridge. The second example is the first goat I ever milked. I named her Ramani because her udders held a story. It's a bit of a comic story. When I was a kid, my hedonistic uncle used to visit us. After lunch, he'd drag me out for a walk. But before we'd leave, he'd call out to my mother, "Sister, give me 4 rials to buy Najib some candy." My mother always gave it to him, but not a single piece of candy ever reached my mouth. He would take me to a field where women were cutting grass. Among them was a woman named Ramani. My uncle would wait for her in a corner and give her those 4 rials just so she'd let him fondle her breasts. I watched this play out until I got the urge to try it myself, but Ramani told me, "Bring 4 rials and you can touch all you want." I told her I had no money, so she slapped my head and chased me off. I couldn't ask my mother for money or she'd kill me, but I couldn't control the obsession. Eventually, I stole 4 rials from the small tin where my mother hid her savings. I went straight to Ramani to enjoy her breasts like my uncle did. But my mother counted every cent in that tin. I was caught easily and interrogated. I confessed everything from A to Z. That movie ended with my uncle never setting foot in our house again. They started calling him Uncle Breasts because of his addiction. Pain becomes lighter when shared. Loneliness is a curse. I felt words rotting inside me and emotions suffocating me because I had no one to live them with. If we don't find ears to hear our sorrows, eyes to look at us, and cheeks that overflow with tears of empathy, we end up in madness or suicide. This is probably why prisoners in solitary confinement lose their minds. The greatest psychological relief is speaking as much as you can. Those deprived of it can die from the weight of the words they've swallowed. I would have died myself if I hadn't vomited the words stuck in my throat in the form of stories told to the sheep. I don't know if they understood me, but they listened. They looked at me, and they even seemed to weep with me. That alone was enough. But I didn't just share my sorrows with the sheep. I went further. I shared my very self. I need to be clear so you understand the movie of my life. One night, I couldn't sleep. A cloud of lust descended upon me. It surged through my entire being and wouldn't stop. It had been so long since I felt anything that I didn't think it would ever take flight again. Lust had been dormant, but that night it rose like a tsunami. I tried to roll a cigarette to distract myself, but it only got worse. My brain escaped me. I started seeing naked women dancing before my eyes. I entered the pen with glazed eyes. The next morning, I woke up with that goat, Ramani, sleeping right beside me. For the wise, a hint is enough. After I found out Hakeem was still alive, my desire to see him grew, and he felt the same. We eventually discovered why we never ran into each other. We were grazing the sheep in two different directions, and there were small hills separating my pen from his. Later, I began climbing those hills, and I could see Hakeem in the distance with his flock. He started inching closer to my side, day after day. My boss scolded me many times for these meetings, but I didn't care. The beatings and insults no longer affected me. I was used to them. Hakeem's boss was even worse than mine. Hakeem told me he was a master of torture. He would pour boiling water on his face, pull out his hair, shove iron rods into his abdomen, kick him in the chest, and submerge his head in the livestock troughs. This made Hakeem terrified that his boss would catch us. He'd say a word or two and then bolt, trembling. I always tried to find excuses to meet. I'd poke a ram or twist its tail until it ran off like a maniac, and I'd chase after it, pretending to try and catch it until I reached Hakeem. The boss would see from the camels that I was just following a stray animal. We'd exchange a quick word, and it was over. If I lingered, the boss would come after me in the car. We racked our brains to condense massive ideas into tiny words. It's hard for anyone who can speak freely to understand the struggle of those deprived of that blessing.
One day, I was out grazing when I saw two rams butting heads. When rams fight, they don't stop until they see blood. I went to break them up with my stick. One left, but the other stayed, huffing and staring at me. I knew he was charging up to ram me, so I stood my ground. Just as he lunged, I dodged. I had learned this trick from years with the flock. The ram missed, hit the ground face first, and the fall knocked the anger out of him. He got up and walked away.
In the spot where he fell, there was a small depression in the sand. I approached it slowly, and I was horrified by what I saw. I checked over my shoulder. The boss was resting, not holding the camels. I started widening the hole bit by bit. I can't describe the shock, brothers, when I found a human hand, decomposed, nothing but bone. My curiosity was uncontrollable. I kept digging until I uncovered a human skeleton laid out before me. Terrified, I stepped back and tripped over something. It was an old leather belt. It looked familiar, and then the memory hit me like a lightning bolt. This was the belt worn by the crazy man who had escaped the pen before me. Without thinking, I sprinted back to the pen, leaving the sheep in the desert. I fell at the boss's feet and started pleading. I won't go anywhere. I won't escape. Just don't kill me. I want to live. I'm afraid of death. The boss stood there confused while I sobbed. He never knew the real reason I collapsed at his feet like that.
My experience taught me that no matter how harsh the sorrow and suffering, with time it becomes a part of life. My pain became routine. I no longer felt its bitterness. Years ago, I used to wonder how beggars, the poor, the chronically ill, and the blind could live such bitter lives every day. How could they smile? Today, I found the answer. This was my life now, and I felt nothing. I'd wake up, milk the sheep, feed them and the camels, go to the desert, come back to eat bread and drink water, and sleep under the sun or the moon. No thinking, no worries, no dreams. I didn't even know what was happening in the rest of the world. What was I missing? I had forgotten my family and my country. I was like a dead man who had passed into another world or an ancient era.
Seasons blurred. Summer, rain, dust storms, everything came and went, and I remained in the pen. Hakim remained in his. One day, another unfortunate soul was added to the mix. He arrived at Hakim's pen and became his companion. I felt the sting of jealousy at that advantage, having someone there. Hakim finally had a human being to talk to. And here I was, my head no different from the sheep's. I started to hate myself. When this new companion arrived, Hakim changed. I didn't know his name or where he was from, but his presence made Hakim smile again. I felt worthless. I grew resentful of the world and took it out on the sheep. I squeezed the testicles of the young lambs until they were castrated. I kicked the udders of the milking goats. I shoved my stick into the backsides of the ewes. Because of this new friend, Hakim was able to get closer to me. When I raised my voice, he could hear me from afar. His boss beat him for it, but he didn't care anymore. He had become brave. I wanted to see this friend, but he rarely left the pen. He worked inside, and Hakim worked outside. I pestered Hakim to bring him one day, and he finally did. Standing before me was a giant, tall and powerful. His name was Ibrahim Kadri, a Somali with vast experience in the desert. Beside him, Hakim and I looked like two skinny cigarettes. A few days later, Hakim stood on a hill and shouted to me. He said, "I'm leaving a paper for you here. Come read it." I took my flock to the hill and found the note under a rock. It read, "Kadri has been in this country before. He knows all the places and roads, and he wants to escape and take us with him. We'll tell you more next time. Trust in God and rely on him." A volcano of joy erupted inside me. What words could describe it? It was like a flower suddenly blooming in the heart of the desert. I lied when I said I'd forgotten my family. My memory had kept everything hidden in the basement, buried by circumstances, but it wasn't lost. The moment I thought of escape, a fire lit within me and my chest ached. My body collapsed from the exhaustion of everything I'd endured, and I began to weep. I prostrated on the ground and thanked God for hearing my cries and sending Kadri like a messenger to save me. I was so happy that day. I worked with a renewed energy. Even the boss must have been surprised. "Listen here, you idol-worshipping boss. The suffering is numbered now. I'm leaving soon, and we'll see who you'll insult and whip then. I'm escaping, and you'll be here alone. Only then will you know the value of Najib." I waited for the signal. 1 day, 2, 3, nothing. Days passed and doubt crept in. I thought they had escaped and left me behind. I resented Kadri and Hakim for 2 days, thinking they weren't men of their word. I went to check if they were gone, and I told myself if they had left me, I would commit suicide. Every morning, I watched their pen from a distance until I saw them, and relief would wash over me. Eventually, I surrendered to fate again. I stopped hoping. I went back to living exactly like the sheep. Then, on a day I expected nothing, Hakim came running toward me with his flock and whispered, "The day after tomorrow, something is happening. Be ready." He said it and ran back. It was like he threw a hot coal into my brain. Something is happening. What? Be ready? That must mean something good. When the time came, I was hesitant. I had lived in that pen for so long I didn't know if I wanted to leave. I didn't want anyone to see me in this hideous state with this terrifying face. This life is full of contradictions. On the designated day, the boss called me to his tent, very unusual. He welcomed me and I sat with him. He said, "Today is the wedding of the big boss's daughter. Neither I nor the other boss will be here. Just keep watch tonight for foxes, snakes, or thieves. When I return in the morning, I'll bring you bread, kapsa, and other treats. I trust you. I've never had a worker like you." Night fell. A car arrived, and a man I'd never seen got out. His white, clean robes made me realize how filthy I was. I looked like a Greek myth of suffering. When the boss got into the car and they drove off, a joy hit me like a child whose parents have left the house, giving him a sudden chance to play. I ran, I danced, I shouted, I laughed. Then I sprinted to Hakeem's pen. He was just as ecstatic. We hugged and cried. He said, "Oh, how I miss my mother, my father, my siblings. I can't take this misery anymore." I told him, "Inshallah, everything you wish for will come true. We've suffered and we're still alive. It's only a few hours left. Get it together. God is with us." I asked Kadri, "Shouldn't we move now?" He smiled, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Be patient, Najib, as you have been until today. Let the bosses get some distance. Don't forget, we are traveling on foot. Go back to your pen, and when the time is right, we will call for you." I ran back, grabbed my bag from under the pillow. It was rotted from the sun and rain, covered in years of dust. I tried to open it, but the zipper was stuck and then it snapped. I pulled out a shirt and pants I had kept there. They were decayed and torn, useless. I had nothing to take. I threw the bag away. I was leaving with zero. I looked at the sheep and camels. They seemed to sense I was leaving. I hugged them and cried. If I made it out, I'd never see them again. I have no one to say goodbye to but you. You were everything to me. You encouraged me to stay alive all this time. The parting was hard, despite the cruel conditions. I was sad even in the moment of escape. Hakeem called from afar. I stepped out of the pen. The sheep bleated, but I didn't look back. I just walked. I found Hakeem and Kadri waiting, and we set out toward a new world. We ran that night as if fleeing a fire in the sky. There was no road except the tire tracks the cars had carved in the sand. We stuck to them so we wouldn't lose our way, even though we didn't know where they led. The moon was bright, which made the escape easier. We walked in silence, not even looking at each other. We were terrified someone was behind us. Every sound of the wind sounded like the boss's car, so we doubled our speed. We ran for a long time until the track split in two, one right, one left. We were stuck. Which one led to the highway? After a quick debate, we went left. We kept running until we saw a light. We realized it was a car moving slowly, shaking on the rough path. God, we must be near the highway. The sun began to bake the earth. I started walking, but my legs felt 100 times heavier than before. It felt like I was moving in place or walking backward. Loneliness wounded my heart, but I struggled until I reached the highway by evening. The road was empty, with the occasional truck passing by. Most were heavy rigs, and the few cars that passed were flying at top speed. I stood by the road with my hand up, but not a single driver had the heart to stop. Darkness fell, and I spent the night there. The next morning, I tried hitchhiking again. No one cared. I wasn't surprised. My appearance was repelling. 3 years in the pen and the desert had turned me into something that looked like a beast. A luxury car came flying down the road. I knew it was pointless to wave, but I raised my hand anyway. It passed me, as expected, but then it slammed on its brakes. No way! Did he actually stop? I ran to it. A clean, well-dressed man rolled down the window. He asked me something, but I couldn't answer. I just cried. He didn't say another word. He just opened the back door. He helped me in and drove off. I was ashamed to sit on those expensive seats in my state. The man turned off the AC, rolled down the windows, and covered his nose with his fingers because the stench coming off me was overpowering. He could have kicked me out, but he didn't. He was a great man. I said, "Water." He gave me a bottle, and I drained it instantly. He asked, "More?" I nodded and finished the second one right away. I was still thirsty, but I was too ashamed to ask for a third. Between the comfortable seat and my exhaustion, I fell into a deep, heavy sleep. I didn't wake up until the car stopped in the city that evening. I looked around. Tall buildings, traffic, crowds of people. The man pulled over, and I understood it was time to get out. How could I thank this man for what he'd done? I had nothing but tears. I said nothing, and he asked nothing. I got out and closed the door, and he drove away. I stood alone in the city, crying and wondering at his kindness. People passed by, looking at me like I was an alien. I walked along the road, and people avoided touching me because I was a sight and a smell to behold. I was starving. I went to 2 restaurants to beg for food, but the owners chased me away like a mangy dog. I kept walking through the market until I saw a sign in my language, Malabar Restaurant. I felt a wave of relief. Someone here spoke my language and would understand me. I headed for the door, but the moment my foot touched the threshold, I collapsed and blacked out. In every Gulf city, there is a great tree people seek in times of hardship. On that day, I fainted in front of the restaurant of a man named Kunjika. He was the big tree providing shade for the entire Keralite community in the Albata neighborhood. When I opened my eyes, I was in Kunjika's house. The guys there told me I'd been unconscious for days. My body felt shattered, and I had an IV in my arm like I was in a hospital. Keralites were surrounding me, and the sight made me cry. Kunjika held my hand and comforted me. Many people came to see me. One brought apples, another oranges, grapes, bananas. Everyone wanted to hear my story, how I ended up like this. I could see the curiosity on their faces, but no one asked. A few days later, I asked Kunjika for a mirror. He sent one of the guys to get a small one. I stared into it, and I didn't recognize myself. The man in the mirror was a stranger. They had cut my hair and shaved my beard, but the man looking back wasn't the Najib who had left home. I was skeletal, blackened by the sun, with sunken eyes and protruding teeth. I wished the mirror was lying.
Kunjika told me about the days I was out. He said they brought me in, gave me water and food, and let me stay in his room. They took me to the bath for 3 consecutive days, called a barber, and brought a doctor to treat me. As he spoke, I wept. The one thing I wished they'd done was take a photo of me before they cleaned me up, but they didn't. I never saw what I actually looked like in the desert. I asked for the date. They said August 13th. I asked what year. The question seemed strange to them. They said 1995. Oh my God, I started counting on my fingers. It had been 3 years, 4 months, and 9 days.
A few days later, Kunjika took me to another room where there was a phone. I had told him my story, and he asked, "Do you want to call your mother and your wife?" My family didn't have a phone, so I gave him the neighbor's number. That number was burned into my memory, even though I'd only called it once when I first arrived at the airport years ago. Kunjika struggled with the line until it connected. I introduced myself to the neighbor. When he realized it was me, he went silent, then asked, "Najib, where have you been all these years?" I didn't know what to say. He told me, "Call back, I'll go get your wife." When I called back, the moment I said hello, I heard Sinu screaming on the other end. We spent a long time just crying. She didn't ask where I'd been or why I hadn't called. It was as if she already knew. She said, "Our son Nabil started kindergarten this year. Don't you want to see him? When are you coming back?" Then she said, "Your mother passed away a year ago. Her heart broke when there was no news of you." I couldn't listen anymore. I put the phone down, buried my face in my hands, and sobbed like a child. I stayed at Kunjika's for 3 months until my wounds healed and the swelling in my legs went down. During that time, I told my story to many people. Many thought I was exaggerating. They didn't believe me. A few did, but they wondered, why did Kadri disappear at the last second? During this time, a man named Hamid appeared. He had also fled the torture and injustice of his sponsor. Hamid and I became close. After consulting with many people, we decided to turn ourselves in to the police. That's how we ended up in the prison where I started this story. And now we return to the day of the lineup in prison. We were standing there when I saw my boss, the kafil, coming through looking for someone. I felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest. He stopped in front of me. He looked at me, but he didn't flinch. I waited for the moment he'd drag me out of line, but he didn't. He just patted my shoulder and walked away without a word. Why? What changed the heart of the man who came all this way for me? He left me standing there, utterly confused. After the lineup, I went to a guard I'd befriended. I said, "That man who just came, he's my boss. Maybe he felt sorry for me and decided not to take me back to suffer again." Do you know what the guard told me? He said, "He didn't feel sorry for you. I heard him leaving, furious, saying, 'If that donkey were under my sponsorship, I would have dragged him back to the pen myself.'" Wait, not under his sponsorship? It turned out he was a thief who had kidnapped me from the airport with no legal right. I learned later through the man who arranged our visas that we had been sent on company visas, not for herding sheep. I spent 3 weeks in that prison, terrified the boss would find some loophole or paper to claim me as a slave again. But he never came back. The day for the embassies came. I waited until they called. Najib Muhammad. No, did they really call? Or am I imagining it? They said it again. Najib Muhammad. I stepped forward. My friends were cheering. I was one of the old-timers there. 80 Indians were being deported by the government that day. I said goodbye to my friends and the guards. We signed some papers, they handcuffed us, and they put us in a long line. By noon, a bus took us straight to the airport. I didn't even get to thank Kunjika for everything. If you were reading these lines, please forgive me for falling short in thanking you. When night fell, the plane was ready. The officials led us aboard. The sight was like 80 head of sheep being led back to a pen. We were bound, and I was one of them, the human goat. That was my story and my harsh journey in this world. I hope this finds you in peace. That's all, brothers. Take care.